Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lucent series part 27 of general knowledge series. We have already completed many of the parts of the series which is covering the ancient India, the medieval India and now it's modern India where we have already completed one part where you can watch in our last video, and today is our another part with the modern India and it's a part of the Lucent series. So let's get started with the economic impact of the British rule. Okay, so if we want to know about the impact, we have to know about the three stages. तो वो जो three stage थे उसके बारे में जानते हैं. जैसे कि first phase जो था, let's know. Please know the names of the other names of the stages as well. And the other stages are named as well, like the first phase is also known as the mercantile phase, the second phase is known as the industrial phase, the third phase is known as the financial phase, and the years are also given, so make sure you know all of that. So the first phase, the East India Company used its political power to monopolize trade and dictate terms to trades of Bengal. So first, the East India Company had entered Bengal, so they had tried, they had tried the political power, like to bring many policies, trade policies, and they were implementing that in Bengal. They were suggesting the political power of that time that implement this power and this trade policies. So it was just like having a monopoly. Now also implemented price of goods, higher prices of goods, and what happened when the price of goods had increased, it led to buccaneering capitalism, where the most of the wealth used to roll out into the richest pockets, not in the poor's pocket. And here the company was one that was rich and it had exploited the economy. And also the revenues of Bengal, what they used to get from the lands, the taxes and all, they were sent as the financial exports to England. Now the second phase, that was the industrial phase. So after all this, we know that these all are signs of exploitation. The exploitators were the British. So of course, India's market was exploited by the British goods. And then what happened at 1813, and then one act of 1813 came that allowed only one-way trade for the British. As a result, the Indian market flooded with cheap and machine-made imports. Indian trade lost foreign as well as home exports. So all that time, the Industrial Revolution were also at its peak. All the goods that were man-made, not man-made. Like the Indian goods were man-made, but the British goods were machine-made. It was having less production costs, less labor costs. So it was initially less in price, and when it was given to the Indian market, they had higher sailings and all, and it had led to the exploitation of the Indian markets. And Indians lost their foreign market as well. Home market was also exploited by them. People bought the lesser price things. Now what happened, Indians now had started they exporting, they were forced to export the raw materials, and then when the raw materials used to reach England, they used to import finished goods through machines. So it was lesser cost, like labor cost used to be more, but it was lesser cost. Now heavy import duty was also given on Indian products to England. So like when when they used to reach their markets, people used to avoid, like it's so costly, they used to go for the cheaper products. Third phase, they had stronger position in India, and then they made India a market. Like they used to bring goods from their places, that was England, and they used to sell here. So India was a strong market, and also India was a strong market, and India was also a supplier, that was of raw materials and foodstuffs. Okay, so this was the things that took place in the third phase, or the financial phase, that was railways, telegraph, banking, and even British investment in India. Then okay, we can agree to a bit that British had invested in India, but it was for their own sake, for their own betterment. And but even this led to the public debt, like the farmers were exploited. Now there were a few industries that came into existence. These were the one. Now drain of wealth, this is one of the theory. Okay, and who was behind this? Dada Bhai Naroji, who had cited in his book, that was Poverty and, like here he had cited in his book, that was Poverty and British Rule in India, that it was mostly a book that had blamed the British policies and for the economic ills that they have brought. So I've highlighted some points like, okay, so trade of wealth means when a portion of the national product, like a portion of what the nation has produced, and it was taken away as a foreign export, and it was not consumed by its own people or by its own countrymen. So this is the absolute understanding of, you can say, drain of wealth. Now, what was this constituents of drain? First, there was extortion, that was by company servants. Like what they used to do, they used to take fortune, like used to take land revenues from the zamindars, rulers, merchants, and this used to make them deprived. And what happened was that people used to purchase goods like Bengal and from the Bengal, and the East India company used to export them outside, that was in England, and this was called an investment by them. Now the Britishers, the third point I can explain is that Britishers were given duty free trade, like they were not needed to pay any revenue or any such duties, but it was to be paid by the Indian merchants. So that was a long gap between them, and the Indian treasury used to face a huge loss. Even the salaries of the company officials were sent to England, and these all were given from the treasury of India, which was in the point 5. You can see all the cost, salaries, and pensions were paid through the treasury of India. And this interests were also paid to the British investors who used to invest in the Indian economy. Now, what were the effects? Like it has totally stunted, like it has led the Indian economy to a stagnant mode. Like the enterprises and all the capital formation were in its initial stage. It was totally a capitalist economy at that time, as all the you can see the economic power was left in the hands of the Britishers, and it had financed them as well. And the policy of free trade zone for the Britishers, it had allowed them to compete in a more better way with the Indian investors, as investors had to pay duties, so it was quite difficult for them. Then this plantations, mines, jute, milk, these all where they had, the managing property. Now, the land revenue system, first is the permanent settlement or the bandobas. It was introduced in these places I have marked, Bengal, Odisha, and it was by Lord Cornwallis. And then John Shore had planned the permanent settlement. And what was in this point, you can see in the third point, is that zamindars of India could keep only 1/11 of the revenue that they had collected from the tenants, but it was opposite for the Britishers, as they could keep one, not 1/11 but 10/11 of the revenue collected, which was totally an exploitation of the tenants as well as the zamindars. Like the Britishers were given an upper hand in this. Then the Ryotwari system, it was introduced in Bombay, Madras, and you can see who had introduced it. Please go through that. And you can see that this system, it was a settlement that was made between the government and the Ryot, that was the cultivator. And here, in the third point, you can see that it was for a period that was not exceeding 30 years, and it was on the basis like what is the quality of the soil and what is the nature of the crop. So on that basis, you have to pay the revenue. And with the system, the cultivator's position was secure, but the revenue collection was still there. They were forced to pay, and this was quite exploitatory in nature. And then all the big zamindars, they had the right of enhancing the revenue at will, while the cultivator, they were left at the mercy of its. Okay, now the Mahalwari system, and it was modified version, you can say, of the zamindari settlement system that was already introduced, and this was introductory in the parts of Ganges Valley, then northwest frontier province, then parts of central India and Punjab. In this system, they had made a village settlement of the village communities, and on this basis, the revenues were paid periodically, and it was known as bhaichara or with mahals, and it was usually a group of villagers. So on that basis, their revenue was revised. Now, what impact this systems had on revenue system? So first was that This settlements, they had introduced market economy and did also away with the customary rights. Cash payment came, and due to the cash payment instead of the land payments, the money lending activity also came into existence, but it left the social discrimination at its peak. Like the rich, they had the access to the courts to get back their lands, but the poor were totally exploited. They were infringed of their rights, and the Britishers used to exploit them at all levels possible. Now the peasants were also forced to grow the commercial crops, and one of the commercial crops were indigo in place of the cash crops, which led to the increase in the price of the cash crops, and they had to buy them like it was a staple diet. So this has also exploited the economy, and the Indian villages were shaken up. Their entire economy had fallen down. The rural society were also began to breaking up. So these were the adverse effects of the systems and the colonial impact of the land revenue system. So for today, that's all for it. We have learned the economic impact of British rule for now. For the next part, we'll learn about a new topic. So till then, stay tuned and keep liking and sharing our videos. Take care.